Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for a conversation around navigating the current state of sales. My name is Alyssa Merwin. I'm the Vice President of LinkedIn's Sales Solutions business for North America. And I'm excited today to have a conversation with two other folks who will be talking about some of the challenges and the opportunities as we think about leading our teams and navigating the uncertainty that we all face today. So I hope that you'll take away some new tips, some ideas, and some tactics that you might be able to implement in your own organizations. To get us started, I'd love to kick off with some quick introductions. So Christina McMillan, if you would first just tell us a little bit about your role, what you do, and maybe your best work from home hack right now.
Great, sure, happy to. So Christina McMillan, VP of Research at Topo. For those who don't know Topo is an analyst firm, and we actually study high growth sales and marketing teams to understand what makes them tick and what makes them successful and grow faster than other teams. And so let's see, my work from home hack. So funny enough, my team is actually 100% work from home all the time. So I think what's been interesting for us, aside from having more coworkers than we're used to working from home with us, is actually just to truly have your own space to work in. I know that feels a little bit like blog 101, but I find that as my team has spent months and months and months working from home, having a place that actually supports a better work habit and work structure also physically helps you survive the working from home. I think anyone who's new to working from home, sitting on the couch, after a while you realize that's probably not the best posture. And so supporting the physical work from home ergonomics is actually really important.
Super important tip. So thanks for that. And Mark, you're the VP of Sales at Outreach. Could you tell us a little bit about your role and the hack that you want to share today?
Yes, I just like Christina, don't recommend doing home office from your bed, which I've caught a few people doing. But yeah, I run the AE group here at Outreach for North America. So I have all of our closers. We get the benefit from the awesome work of our SDRs and marketing and convert the pipeline that they send over to us. So my tip is I have found that in my career, I worked for about 15 years from home, and then I work in the office at Outreach, and now being back home again, I had to reflex some muscles that had maybe atrophied. And I think my number one tip is I find that your calendar gets out of control way faster working from home. And so with my direct reports, I have a 2-hour from 7 to 9 a.m. every day with one, like a direct reports that run enterprise or my direct reports that run new markets or corporate or whatever. And I do a working session with them. And we don't always talk on the Zoom, but we work on the Zoom. And that's when we actually have output of work instead of just jumping from meeting to meeting to meeting. And we found that really good, just great conversation, getting things done, shoring up task lists for the week. And so that would be my tip, is set aside time with the people you need to get work to actually do work.
That's a great one. I haven't heard of that before, but I will. I definitely think about implementing that for my team as well. It's amazing how little work we get done when all we're doing is sitting in meetings all day. So love that. Thank you. And then the one that I'll share is, this is a relatively new phenomenon, the working from home dynamic for me. I have found that I am going a bit stir crazy and that my energy really gets drained if I don't get up and move. And so I have taken to identifying the meetings across my day and my week where I can take a walking meeting. So I'll do a dial-in instead of video conference. So I try to do that at least twice a day and get a little exercise, a little fresh air, and it helps to keep my energy high. So hopefully we can all take some tips from each other, and I will definitely be implementing a couple of this. Thank you for sharing. Would love to transition now into what has changed for your businesses. Obviously, the world is a very different place than it was a few weeks ago. And Christina, I'd love for you to answer either on behalf of your own organization or what you might share on behalf of the other leaders that you're talking to. And then Mark, would love to hear the same from you about what's changed the most for your sales teams.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that we found is, when we look to kind of when all of this started going down, 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a reactionary period where organizations just had to stabilize what was happening and wrap their arms around what this really meant, how serious was this issue, and it's turned out to be quite serious. And so we find that a lot of organizations are leaving that stabilized period and sort of now starting to look at how do we dig out of that hole. But in that stabilized period, there was a lot of first of all, what does this mean? All of a sudden events are canceled, so we have to replace that pipeline. It was very tactical, moving from here to there, and it sort of culminated in revising business plans or revenue targets for a lot of organizations and taking stock of what that really meant. So once most organizations were able to step back and say, okay, great, we now have a new revised plan. Now we can start doing the things that we know we need to go do and reinventing how we're going to go achieve that in this new construct, this new environment. And so we did the same for our business, and we've been doing that with nearly every client we work with, which is reanalyzing their target markets. Because if you're targeting certain industries right now, those are largely like ghost towns. If you're trying to sell into travel right now, it's probably not the best time. Even if you're trying to sell into specific regions, depending on what you're selling, you have to sort of take this new approach that is not tone deaf to the reality that we're all facing. So reanalyzing target markets, having real conversations and plans around reallocating resources that could be budget or people, doing things like really taking a strong look at messaging to make sure that the messaging that we're going out there is not, again, tone deaf, but is not also like a, gosh, have you run out of quarantine snacks? Like a lot of the cheesy things that kind of came out initially, and really being thoughtful about how we help organizations through this. And so specifically around messaging, what that's meant for our customers is it's a lot of reassessing, like, how do we really fit into our customers' mission critical priorities? Because right now they're shedding everything that is nice to have. And so really making sure that sales organizations down to our reps are able to have that conversation to stay in the game. That is where pipeline is continuing. Those are the biggest things we're seeing.
Great. Makes a ton of sense. And Mark, what about for you?
There's two main things that have changed for us. The first one is we have a fairly aggressive outbound tone to our messaging and to our cadence of how we do our sequences. And we have had to be very careful that we immediately change to an empathetic message. Now, kind of like Christina just said, we're looking at it as a three-phase thing. First phase is like complete empathy. Don't ask, just offer help. We think that phase has died and is now really bad to keep doing that. I just got a message today where I'm like, is this guy just not get it? Like, why is he still saying, hey, here's your work from home COVID resource? I don't need that. The second phase, we think we're calling it, a guy on my team, Steven Sunshine, coined this term of compassionate urgency. Listen, you still have a job and you will get to keep your job based on how you respond into this crisis. So like, let's not lick our wounds. Let's get into problem solving mode, right? And then we believe there's a third phase that's just about to hit, where the really smart sales leaders are leading us there already, which is there's an opportunity to happen and there's something that's going to happen with this new normal. And I want my team to be ready to take advantage of that. So I think that kind of approach is very different than our normal outbound prospecting approach, which drives a huge amount of our pipeline. And we've had to change that and address that kind of phase 1, 2, 3 kind of methodology. And the second thing is our culture is really special here. And I know a lot of companies think that, but I think I really believe it. And being in the office and around everybody else charged a part of our batteries that we just can't charge on our own. And so being able to kind of create a new place to plug in so that we can charge that part of our battery, which gives it, that's like my extra, you should be able to get yourself to 100%, but the office and the culture, we can get you to 120%. Like, people are used to being at 120%. So how do I create a new way for them to plug in to get that extra bit of charging that they can't do on their own, their family can't do for them? And I think we've really had to create a bunch of mechanisms that we've never had before to make sure people feel plugged in. So those will be the two big changes for us.
Yeah, that makes sense on both counts. And I'd love to go a little bit deeper if we could on the first, in terms of guidance to your teams, your sales team. Did you work with marketing to adapt and adjust messaging? What was the process, and how did you get all of your sellers to start changing their go-to-market with a new motion?
So we have two awesome people that handle that part of it. And one of them is Steve Ross, our VP of Sales Development. So immediately he understood that times were changing and saw numbers that needed to say our approach change. So he then activated his leadership team and they probably did work a little bit with marketing and figured out what kind of messaging we needed to do. And then we continued to watch the performance of that messaging in our platform to make sure that it was strong and we had gotten the dials right. Then we also have Harmony Anderson, who's our Senior Director of Demand Gen, who also kind of aligned to that messaging. And we're really lucky here. We have a full-time resource that only manages our outreach sequences, which is kind of like, if you think about it, like a content person for marketing. It's a sales content person. And so he went through and all of the, say, 70 sequences that our SDR teams across all the segments of personas use, went in and adjusted all of that messaging so that we were using the right stuff. That includes like the phone scripts, prompts. It includes the emails and the LinkedIn message stuff that we do. And we had like that kind of rapid response. You know, our platform, you know, obviously enables you to do that, but we have the right people in place that put it in place. And then our approach is come with a hypothesis, test it, make sure it's right. If it's not right, move to the next one, because we're not going to get them all right. So make sure you're watching and getting feedback. But that's kind of how the process worked here. And I'd say within 6 hours, we had all new messaging out to our 50 SDRs that was in line with what our hypothesis was of what would work.
Wow. That's
awesome.
Quick work. Great. Congratulations. And did you find that that was resonating, or did you have to make any adjustments from that original change?
I think that what we did, I think the original change definitely helped. And then what we found was it started dying, that the effectiveness quickly died off. And that's when we realized we're out of phase one. Like people don't want you to say, I'm sorry, I feel bad for you. Here's some blog post that somebody wrote in 3 minutes that has a bunch of top 10 lists that nobody cares about. You know, people need to, if you're still in that mode, we need to help you get out of that mode. I think that's what we found more than like, we didn't get it right the first time.
And if I could maybe just add on to that, I think you're absolutely right. Once everybody moved out of that reaction phase, which is like we're all sort of shocked and trying to figure out how to crawl out. Now folks are like, now I just want to figure out how I go help my customers just kick ass moving forward. And so it's how do I latch onto the things that they're trying to do to pull their businesses forward in this new uncertain time? And how do I show that I'm a meaningful contributor to that effort? And so any sales rep should absolutely be like doubling down on thinking about what is most important to their customers right now, not just generally in and around how we help them, but like right now in this new reality, what are they trying to solve for and how can I tie into that?
Yeah, I think both of those are so important. And we went through our own journey and of course, are still going through it. And, you know, I think part of it is doing exactly what you both just mentioned, is recognizing where are your customers on their own experience. Everyone's in a different place on the curve, depending on the industry that you're in, the location, what's happening in your personal life. And we as sellers have to be able to recognize and have that conversation and then quickly move past it and get into business continuity and how we can help if that's the appropriate conversation to have. Or it may be that there are customers that are in distress and it's not necessarily about talking about the renewal or growth plans, and it's really about preservation. And so really navigating that conversation is going to be more important now than ever. And one of the things I've been thinking about is we've for a long time always said that you've got to be great at discovery and you've got to really understand your customers' challenges, and yet many of us still get away with a subpar sales experience, and the customers are having a subpar experience. And I think in a time like this, where there's very little appetite for wasting time and energy on a not super helpful, productive, or valuable call, I think that we're going to start to see a real distinction between those reps that can make it in this environment and those reps that are not up to the challenge. And we're going to have to help people, I think, move through that curve as well.
I think that's an amazing point. And I think we talked about it here at Outreach, is that there's value-based selling. And we all know that that's the point of a seller, is to create demand by showing a piece of value that a customer wants, right? And they're willing to pay for. That's like the definition of sales. But I think up until now, to Alyssa's point, is there's soft value-based selling where they sell the vision and the alignment and there's the idea of what could be. And then there's we all have those sellers that are our hard value sellers. I'm going to get out a spreadsheet. I'm going to get you into your numbers and I'm going to show you with the math what I can do for you. And I think right now you need to be able to put on your hard selling skills, because a CFO isn't going to listen to somebody buying right now and be like, oh, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. Let's go capture some opportunity that might exist. What they want to say is, I have real risk. I want to know how you're going to mitigate it in a dollar-based way. And that hard value selling is the kind of experience I think, Alyssa, that people want right now.
Yeah, I think we've all seen from, the research that there are more and more people involved in the buying decision than ever before. But just from our own experience in these last few weeks, we've never seen so much involvement at the 11th hour, even with verbals and contract renewals of a CFO coming in and saying, I need to understand at in excruciating detail exactly how this is going to add value or we're cutting it. And so I think you're right. It's the hard dollar value that is going to be so critical. And Christina, I'm sure you're seeing this yourselves and with your clients. So tell us a little bit about what your experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Mark on the sort of being more tangible with value as opposed to the no, trust me, it's this better optimized place that we're going to take you to. So making that value more tangible, but also, again, getting back to we have to understand how we are solving the specific problems they have today. So if they are in cost cutting mode, understanding why they're in cost cutting mode, it could be to preserve headcount, right? There are a lot of organizations that are saying, you know what, we're going to cut as many costs out as possible so we can save people and save jobs. And so we are seeing some organizations, particularly, go to markets that are laying off salespeople, laying off CS. And the reality is that in many cases, it's for the folks who can't align to this new selling construct. So we often use sort of the peacetime, wartime analogy. Peacetime sort of hides a lot of selling bad behaviors. And to your earlier point, Mark, like we cannot do that right now. Like we absolutely need folks that understand the right steps to take and the right message to resonate. Otherwise, we're not going to have progress. Because right now, we actually see a lot of folks who are building early pipeline, having conversations. But as those deals progress, our normal conversion rates are not occurring. Like there's a lot of stuff that's getting partway through and then stalling or stopping or just completely going dark for all the reasons that we know. Everybody's exploring ways to try to figure out continuity, but very few are getting through because at that 11th hour, if it's not tangible, if it's not hard value, they just can't justify it because they don't know if they're going to have to say no later.
Alyssa, I'm sure LinkedIn has some kind of mechanism to let you guys know what the general tenor of things that people engage with is. I'd love to know, like, are you seeing the empathetic stuff, posts and content of at LinkedIn really drive engagement? Or is it the more like, hey, get your butt in gear and let's solve it? Like what kind of stuff are you hearing from the LinkedIn data machine?
Well, you're right. I mean, there's tremendous information that we have in terms of what's trending, and no surprise that COVID-19 has been one of the top trending themes that we've ever seen on the platform. And I think what's been most interesting is I don't know that I have a specific type of content that is resonating, but I think by virtue of the platform itself and the reasons that people are coming to LinkedIn and the engagement is at all-time highs in a bunch of dimensions that we measure, whether it's colleagues engaging and interacting with each other, or we're seeing sales leaders posting on LinkedIn more than ever before. And so I think that what you are seeing a lot of engagement with generally are things that are associated with business continuity. I think people, for the most part, are past that stage that Christina mentioned of sort of frozen and reassessing, and now they're in, we either need to survive or figure out how to thrive right now. And so most of the engagement that you're seeing is, again, in that spirit of how do we drive our business forward? How are we putting out content that's powerful for the user base and the audience we want to engage, and starting to engage that way. So it's, I think we've moved past like you said earlier, the work from home tips and tactics. I think we're all figuring that out as we go. It's time to get back to business.
Well, and I also think, depending on the tenure and the demographic of your sales organization, many of those resources have not sold in a downtime. And they actually need to relearn how to sell. Because again, many of the bad behaviors that worked in peacetime are not going to work now. And so really, it's almost like a re-ramp or an enablement type of push to really help them understand things like hard value. Maybe they haven't had to use those before, and they're literally not equipped with the right selling skills. And so, we sort of are looking at this, helping your sellers navigate like a methodology of selling in a recession. is actually a very different approach, sales process, enablement strategy than it was before.
Yeah, you're right. And we're doing a little bit of research, and I'm writing a post on this very topic of there's a skills gap with a lot of sellers, and we're starting to now see though that many sellers are brushing up on analysis and data, and you're seeing more of that insights driven sale. And I do think that it's going to continue to be one of the most important attributes as we think about the talent that we need from here and going forward.
I actually think that's a silver lining to this sort of situation. Like that's going to make our sellers better, even when things start to normalize and get back to normal.
100%. 100%. Mark, I want to ask you a question about pipeline. It sounds like you guys have made some important adjustments to your go-to-market. Are you experiencing any of what Christina mentioned around some of that maybe strong top of funnel, but stalling out? And, if so, I'd love to understand how you're thinking about navigating. And if not, why is that? Why might you be one of the few that are able to work through that?
Well, we're definitely seeing an impact on our overall pipeline gen. It's below what we would normally expect. But what we're seeing that's interesting is that deals are closing for smaller amounts much faster. So let's say our average deal size might have gone down 10 or 15%, but my average deal cycle is down 25 to 30% depending on the segment. And I think what that says is it kind of is the picture that bolsters everything we've already talked about is if you can get in there and show somebody how you can make a difference, people are willing to take a quick bite right now. And if you're not, then what happens is you get these super long, elongated sales cycles because people say, well, listen, I need to figure out this, this, and this. Call me back in June. And so we've really tried to work with our team on saying, how do you figure out what phase is somebody in? If they're in phase 1, how do you rattle their cage in a compassionate way to get them into phase 2 or phase 3? If they're in phase 2 or phase 3, let's really work on helping them make a quick decision because that seems to be what our buyers want to do. They don't want to think about it, they want to act. And so I'd say that's been a big thing that we've tried to help our reps understand.
Mm-hmm. And are you adjusting your KPIs at all right now? Because I in a normal world, I think if we saw, great that maybe the cycle times are compressing, but not so great that the ASPs are shrinking. And so in a normal world, we might have said, okay, how can we, refine our approach so that we're increasing our deal size, or maybe we need to do more of a certain activity to make up for the smaller deals. So what kind of guidance are you giving to your team in a time like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that what's interesting is our win rate this quarter is actually at what our win rate was in Q4, which is historically a higher win rate quarter for us. So we're not seeing that we're losing more deals. It's just that the deals are happening smaller and faster. And so our methodology outreach is a little bit of land and expand. And so what we're saying is, hey, listen, get in more deals now to bank more expansion revenue later. And outreach, we're really lucky. It actually is a product that if you use it, it really impacts the bottom line. And you can see and feel what it does tangibly in your org. And so get that quick deal in. We don't need to try to expand it out to $1 million deal right now. If you can get in a quick 70K, let's get that in, get them going, do what's right for them right now. And then that will be our proof case to then do the bigger expansion later. And so that's what we really are giving the guidance to our reps is don't artificially elongate sales cycles. Get the nibble, pull the hook, let's set the hook and get the fish in the boat. And we'll worry about, all the other fish in the sea after that.
And are you asking your reps to do more, discos, demos, sort of earlier stage activity because of that? Or is it just steady state week on week?
Most of our AEs don't do very much prospecting in quotes, meaning cold emails and cold calls. We expect them to do higher order prospecting and run more advanced prospecting plays that require a little bit more skill and deftness of hand. You know what I mean? So we haven't increased what we require in meetings, but we have seen an increase in meetings in upper segments. We actually are close to setting a record in the number of meetings that we sit in upper segments. Lower segments, obviously, we're struggling there more than than anywhere else. So while we haven't raised the meeting load, what I've raised is the expectation of our team to follow best practices and to do all the extra things in a deal. Like, for example, send them a video prior to the IM to get them excited for that first meeting. Then after a demo, if there's 4 people, follow up with each person individually and see if you can schedule a follow-up meeting to see, did the demo meet their specific needs? Those are things that we'd want reps to do, but normally in normal times, they might be too busy to always do them. Right now, we're saying there's no reason not to do every single one of those. And we have a 2-page list of all of these extras. And I think that that's where we have increased the accountability is once you get a deal in, we expect you to work it in an A+ way, not a B+ way,
Right.
not increase the number of meetings.
Love that. I love that prescription around the specific ways to follow up. And I think on behalf of buyers out there everywhere, also appreciate the guidance you're giving your team around making sure that they're reaching out with the right context and the right insights in a personalized way. It's a lot of what we preach as well with the Sales Navigator platform is you know, in order to engage effectively, it's got to be tailored and customized, and you know, has to be the right high touch in order to get in front of the right people. Now, Christina, one of your colleagues was sharing with me that you guys have done some really interesting analysis around this very idea of you know, engaging with customers in this environment. Can you share any either specific insights or anecdotes about what your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we are collecting research on this like weekly as things continue to evolve. And I think that, again, having moved out of that initial stabilization reactionary period, we are now seeing that the majority of organizations are reporting a significant drop in pipeline. Like 87% expect 20% or more of a drop in pipeline. That's significant. We're all sort of like going, holy cow. And I think that the more seasoned organizations that are, you know, either a little more resilient or high growth are not going immediately to KPIs as the relief, but rather saying, let's dig in as a team and find creative ways to make it up. So Mark alluded to some of those, but another one that we're seeing that a lot of our clients are rallying around is how can we make sure that we hyper focus to drive people into the pipeline for the right reason? And so we may not make up the volume, but at least we can start changing the mixture to be more confident about who's actually going in. So rallying around high value offers, for example, like high value offers, you know, we've been talking about for the last, you know, 18 to 24 months. And it's not just about like, great, let's go have a high value meeting, but now it's about how can we get creative in this virtual world to deliver insights and value to them that drive them to want to engage in a sales or commercial conversation. And so a lot of teams are getting more creative around that high value offer and then making sure that marketing, sales dev, and sales are sort of all know their role in delivering on that, whether it be positioning it or, you know, if marketing's driving it through digital channels to get attention, sales dev is doing lots of outbound prospecting to try and get people to engage around it. And then making sure that by the time that meeting happens with the sales rep, that the sales rep is ready to sort of run that and make sure that that offer is delivered in a way that's valuable and draws them into that commercial conversation. But that's it. It's about changing. Can we all focus not around just getting people to the table, but getting to them to the table in a way that we can then hyper focus and deliver on to make sure that they carry through the pipeline as far as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. And you touched on something that is, you know, I think that most companies are going to experience, which is probably a hit to the current quarter performance, as well as most likely the next couple of quarters. And I'm curious if you've seen any of your clients, are they doing anything as it relates to adapting or adjusting plans for reps right now? Are we adjusting quotas and doing make goods for people? What have you seen people doing?
Yeah, that is certainly one of the hottest questions we have right now. And I think that where we're seeing, you know, there's sort of 2 camps, right? We are seeing a small subset of our data, about 26%, where they immediately are reducing quotas, right? And I would say that small majority is potentially setting themselves up for a challenge down the road when I have to ratchet them back up. When's the right time? Like, how does that reset everyone's expectations? And so what we're actually seeing that's better is not changing quotas, not changing some of those KPIs. So we're aligning ourselves for when we get back there and rather trying to make it up in other ways. So some are establishing incentive floors, which is like based off of either the group's performance or individual performance over the last several periods. We're going to try to at least make you whole as a person to support you in your livelihood in this crazy time. And so they're trying to make it up with commission, spiffs, things like that to make the person secure, but not changing the organizational expectations because of the problems that would create further down the road.
Makes a ton of sense. Mark, what are you guys doing?
So I think our holistic way of looking at it is if we, leadership, outreach, us, have done something that impedes the success of a rep, it's our job to make sure that we take care of the rep and with quota relief or some kind of incentive or whatever. But if we aren't responsible, outreach isn't responsible, but there's some other larger thing going on, then I think we all need to share in what that impact is.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I don't want salespeople making half of their OTE and stuff like that. But at the same time, we haven't made any cuts here. We actually have only slowed down hiring a touch. And so in order to do that, we need people to share in the investment of the company by keeping things the same and getting as close as you can to where you need to be. Now, we have an awesome leadership team. My boss, Anna Baird, goes to bat for reps like I've never seen an executive do. My guess is at the end, she's going to look at it and she's going to take care of her people because she always does that. I don't know what that means. But I do know that that's like her heart, and that's what she's proven to us as a team. But I think the general state of mind that we want reps in is we're keeping your jobs, we're not cutting your pay, there's no furlough, we're not dropping anything down, and we're going to still continue to hire so that we can grow as a company, and the equity in your company is going to be worth more because we do that. And so join us in that investment and make sure that you have some skin in the game like the company does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It makes a ton of sense and a super thoughtful approach. In terms of what we've done, I think we've been in the camp of let's absolutely make sure we take care of our people. And we have folks that are in high cost areas and early in career. And so the prospect of not hitting their incentive targets or getting to their OTE can be actually quite paralyzing. And so what we've decided is we're not going to adjust quotas right now either, Christina. I think for the same reasons you just mentioned, I think it's really hard to know right now how you would adjust them and to what level. But we are guaranteeing part of the variables to at least make sure people have enough to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head, and then we'll adjust from there. I think, Mark, to your point as well, we'll assess once we know more and we get through this period and we understand the impact, if there's anything else retroactively that we'd want to do. It's a tough one right now for sales leaders and business leaders because there's so much uncertainty. I think it's unclear just how punishing it's going to be in this quarter and then how long that will last. So I think all of these approaches make sense.
We're really blessed, Alyssa, that we work for companies that have the financial fortitude to do that stuff and then have great leaders that are willing to do that kind of stuff. I think for people that are listening to this that don't have companies and cultures like that, it is a strategic investment in order to show your reps. Like you can get half of your workforce to stay with you 2 extra years, which has unbelievable impact on your bottom line. If you take this opportunity and show people that you appreciate them and what they do for the business as much as you appreciate what the business does for them. And so, it's a really, we're fortunate. We have leaders that align to this philosophy. We have financial means to do it. Other people might not have one of those, but I think that you can still do something that helps your people understand it. And, I feel really bad for all the sales reps. Like the immediate thing was CFO, cut costs, get out of here, protect the business. And what they didn't realize is maybe they didn't protect the business in the long term. They did it in the short term. And I get that's important. But if you haven't done something yet, if you're still figuring things out, look at how I feel about outreach. I'm sure, Alyssa, you feel the same way about LinkedIn. And if you want people to feel like that and work hard for your company, then you got to do awesome things for them. Otherwise, people like us will go to companies that do this stuff for us because we have standards, and you and I both experience what great is. And I wouldn't go work at somewhere that isn't like this now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're so right about the long term. The cost of losing people now, even if it's for cost cutting, but then the cost of recouping them later, rehiring, obviously not the same people, but rehiring them later, and then having to ramp and onboard and all of the costs associated. It just, if there's a way to make it through some of the tough times with the people you have and take care of them. And I think the approach you guys are taking is really a really sound one as well. Is like for right now, we all need to share in some of the hardship, but we're going to take care of it on the other side as well. So I think there are lots of different options and ways that companies can navigate. So I'm going to bring us to our last question, and I'd love to end on a high note. So would love for each of you to share, what do you think the one positive lasting impact of this experience is going to be, either on your company or on the industry, the profession of sales? Christina, would you mind starting?
Yeah, sure. I'll share both for my team and for the clients that we work with. But I think it's the connectedness. I think that, there's so much where folks try to keep, obviously, professionalism in the workplace and all of this, but it has broken down walls and forced human beings to connect differently. And in many ways, those connections are much, much stronger. With my team, who is largely remote, you would think we actually spend a ton of time together on video conferences, but we're spending more. And we're spending more talking about the things that are in everyone's individual lives, and how we support work in and around that so we all feel whole. There's also this fact that for a lot of companies, we now have a shared purpose that has pulled us together even more than the business mission, which is, for our business in particular, it's about helping our clients through what is potentially one of the most meaningful events they've ever had in their business, and helping them survive. And so that shared purpose of, like, it drives you forward to not just dwell on the current state of reality, but focus on the things that you can control. And so that shared humanity across the board within your organization and with your customers, frankly, I think it's a very welcome, refreshing new way for us to move forward.
Great. Thanks, Christina. And Mark, what about you?
That's definitely number one. It's a kind of amazing how much more connected people feel, even though they're less connected physically. It's a strange and weird thing, right? Mm-hmm. I think three kind of more tactical things for us is that people that are doing best practices are seeing different results than people that refuse to do them. And I think that idea of, like, I need to find best practice and align to it and then iterate on it is something that I think that sales teams right now are running to. That a lot of the sales leaders I talk to, and I talk to a lot, they're realizing that the stuff that they thought was broken is actually completely broken, and the stuff that they thought was okay is actually pretty broken. And so they are trying to figure out what is best practice so that their stuff isn't broken. Like at outreach, not to toot our own horn, but like our stuff isn't broken. Like we're having to make changes to our systems, but we're not broken, right? You just change the part that isn't working right now. A lot of people are understanding they need to get to that point. The second thing is this idea that we can, like, if you can overcome and have success as a seller, my bottom segment, which consists of about 20 sellers, is getting hammered in that SMB space. Half of my reps are still probably going to hit quota this quarter. If you can do that, like, what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, if I throw the hardest initiative and most work-heavy project that I've ever thought of to you, if you can do this, you can do that. And like if we can do this, like, that's what I think is going to stick around as we can. And then lastly is, I talk a lot of my reps in onboarding about this, but as leaders, we know that we demand the best from our reps. But what I don't think happens is reps don't demand the best from their leaders. And right now they are. They're saying, I don't know what to do. You have to help me. That one-on-one where we leave saying, hey, Alyssa, you're doing a great job. Just keep going it and you'll make it happen. That is BS. And I will not accept that in my one-on-one anymore. And so, like, I think that reps' demand on leadership and on managers is heightened right now. And I think it's going to stick around because a manager and a frontline leader and a leader in general that can't deliver is one that will lose face and they'll have to be replaced. And I think that it'll stick around and people will remember the fact that, like, I could go demand more of my manager and they could give me more. So why wouldn't I do it more often?
Yeah, that's great. And, there's a common theme, I think, in a couple of those that you just mentioned, which in the way I've been thinking about it as, I think this is going to expose the differences between those that are truly performing their best and are experimenting right now and are innovating and are adapting, and those that want to continue to operate in the old world. And with LinkedIn's Sales Navigator, modern selling is our DNA, and that's what we try to help organizations to do more effectively. And I think that this idea of modern selling is all about putting your customer at the center. It's about making sure that you're reaching out in the right way with the right context. And I do think that this is going to be an exposing time where we're going to see those that can adapt and adjust and figure out how to thrive in this environment. To your point, those 50% of your team that are still able to be successful in the face of all of this craziness, there's something different that they're doing, and it's going to really help us to figure out, who's going to be with us for the long term, and how do we help maybe that other half that's not quite performing. How can we help them to adapt and adjust and increase their skills to hopefully make it with us too? But it's really going to, I think, be very telling about what it takes to survive and thrive right now. So yeah, good.
I was going to say one more point that I think is pretty cool coming out of this is this phase that we're in right now, this phase 2, where organizations are reinventing themselves. I think one of the big silver linings coming out of that is that we are going to build businesses and selling teams that are far more resilient. Yeah. So when something like this comes along again, this group will have that experience and will have those plans in place to move quicker next time. Now, may not be a pandemic, may not be a recession, whatever it is, though, we are building businesses that are better able to adapt and continue forward successfully. And I think that's a really great thing to take away from this whole experience.
It absolutely is. I mean, resilience is the name of the game in every aspect of our lives right now. So Christina, Mark, thank you so much for today's conversation. To all of you tuning in, we hope that you have taken away some nuggets and some wisdom. Sending you all the best. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.